Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is a video to compare two wireless mice from Corsair, the Corsair Dark Core RGB Pro and the Corsair M65 RGB Ultra Wireless. These are two interesting gaming mice from Corsair, quite different. The Dark Core was my favourite a long time ago when I reviewed it, and then they released the Pro version with some changes to it, and now in 2021 we have the M65 Wireless, which is ultra lineup and a very premium device with a really nice build quality to it. There are a number of comparable interesting things about both these mice that make them worth talking about because, for example, they're both quite weighty and heavy. The Dark Core RGB Pro, for example, weighs in at 133 grams, whereas the M65 can go up to 128 grams, but it comes in at 110 as standard before you add the extra weights in. They have some interesting features and specs that make them stand together and apart. Both have 8 programmable buttons, for example. Both have a 2000 Hz max polling rate, and both offer both Bluetooth and slipstream wireless connectivity. The M65 is definitely the more premium of the two, though, with a more spec-rich lineup. I'll leave all the specs in the description, but this mouse goes up to 26,000 max DPI with Corsair's MARKSMAN optical sensor versus the Dark Core's 18,000. It also has 50 G's acceleration, 650 IPS in terms of tracking speed as well. As you all know, it only has one RGB lighting zone, but it does have an adjustable weight system, which the Dark Core Pro doesn't. The Dark Core Pro is still interesting though, and I did really like it. And it is still an interesting offering, thanks to things like the large side thumb rest and the swappable plate that allows you to put a pinky rest on the other side as well, and I'll show you more on that later on. The M65 is a aluminium framed gaming mouse with an adjustable weight system that feels hefty in the hand. It's worth noting that this mouse is designed for a claw grip style, while the Dark Core is designed for palm grip, so they have a different setup in terms of who they're aimed at. I'm going to compare these mice side by side at the end of the video so you can see what they look like in the hand and how they stack up side by side. But in my mind, the M65 is a bit too small. It is interesting that they've thrown in this adjustable weight system though. You have the option to either add in the black weights and these silver plates on top of them, or just the silver plates and then screw them down into place. And doing so obviously adjusts not only the overall weight of the mouse, but also the center of gravity. It's a really easy installation process, and it's nice to have the option to either add these or not. Quite a weighty mouse at 128 grams max, almost double that of the ultra lightweight gaming mice I've tried lately. However, I feel like this is a good thing because you definitely feel like you're getting value for money in terms of the overall build quality. This feels like a really premium mouse with a really nice look and feel to it and a great overall design aesthetic. I really enjoy the setup of this one. I feel like it's a shame that it's a bit too small, otherwise it's great. It comes with a 1.8 meter rubber USB-C cable, which I think is one thing that lets down the overall quality. There's no braided USB-C cable. It's not particularly flexible or fancy, but they do say it's Tangle free, and I didn't have any problems with it. It's also worth noting that it has decent battery life too. You can get up to 120 hours of battery out of it over Bluetooth, or up to 90 hours with a slipstream wireless connection. This is going to vary depending on the RGB lighting, but if you compare it to the Dark Core's up to 16 hours with the lighting on, or 36 hours with it off over slipstream, or 18 and 50 hours over Bluetooth, then you can see that the M65 wins in terms of the battery life alone. However, you can see that the Dark Core Pro is a nice looking mouse with a multitude of things going for it. It has 8 programmable buttons and easy access buttons within reach of your thumb and index finger. You can see the side buttons and those buttons on top next to the left button. And as I said earlier, it also has the option to remove the side plate on the right hand side. So you can take that off and then you can store a USB slipstream wireless dongle in the side there when you're not using it, which is a nice little highlight. But it can also be swapped out so that you can add in a rest for your little finger on the other side of the mouse. These rests are actually fantastic, and I really like them on the original Dark Core and this Dark Core Pro because they add a nice level of comfort that keeps your hand off the desk. Because it has a palm grip style that fits my style of gaming really nicely, and the result is it keeps my hand off the desk and allows for a lot more fluid movement and a good comfort. You also obviously have the option to switch between these plates, so you don't have to use that one if you don't want to. The other thing that you will notice from these shots is that the Dark Core has a lot more in terms of RGB lighting. It has 9 programmable RGB zones, and you can see them along the side, the Corsair logo, the little bits at the back, the mouse wheel, and obviously you have the DPI level indicator with 3 little indicators on that left hand side as well. So there's plenty going for this mouse in terms of buttons, in terms of the overall customization and the look and feel. It doesn't have the weight system that the M65 does, but it's still great. USB-C connection on both these mice makes it easy to plug them in and charge when you need to, though obviously you'll find you're plugging in the M65 a lot less than the Dark Core. What should be clear now is the M65 is the more premium of the two. Despite the fact that the Dark Core is weightier, the M65 feels more premium in the hand thanks to that aluminium frame. I also said in my review, which I'll link to in the description, that I found the clicks on this mouse to be particularly crispy and satisfying. Because of the metal frame and the zero gap setup in terms of where the switches are in relation to the buttons, it gives you a really satisfying response when you click those buttons and makes a wonderful noise and gives some interesting feedback like no other that I've seen on other gaming mice I've tried recently. On the side, you'll note there's a large red sniper button, so you can use that for marksman mode, drops into a low DPI level and allows you to get a good shot on your target in FPS games. On the top, behind the mouse wheel, you also have up and down DPI buttons and a little colourful indicator to let you know which DPI level you're at. So you can see that within iCUE software, and then you have that visibility at a glance. A nice little function of this mouse and a real hidden gem. Talking of hidden gems, the other thing that the M65 Ultra Wireless does, which is particularly interesting, is it has a gyroscope built into it, which allows you to tilt the mouse and carry out various actions. You can tilt it side to side and back and forth off the desk, lifting it from one side to the other, for example, onto the edge, and then activating actions with the mouse. I covered this in the review and in iCUE software. Essentially, this allows you to assign actions, whether it's button presses, actions on the mouse, or macros, to various different angles. That means not only does the mouse have 8 programmable buttons, it also has more because you have these tilt actions and gestures, which make for a particularly interesting thing that isn't immediately obvious with this mouse. The Dark Core doesn't have that functionality, but it does still hold up in terms of the overall setup. I really like this mouse for a long time because of the comfortable textured grips on it, the side buttons, the setup in terms of the thumb and finger rest, and the overall vibe of it. Obviously, being a wireless mouse, it's also a wonderful setup. The other version of this, the previous version with the special edition, also had wireless charging so that you could use a charging pad on a mouse mat in order to just drop it on there and charge it when you weren't using it, which was a wonderful addition. This is not the special edition version of that mouse because unfortunately I never got to see the newer version of it, of the Pro SE, but it is still worth bearing in mind that that is a particular option. The M65 does not have wireless charging, so that is one thing the Dark Core shines for. However, the clicks on it aren't as satisfying, and it's worth noting that both mice use Omron switches, but the M65 has optical Omron switches, and so it is not only more accurate and more responsive, but will also last longer. You have a 50 million button guarantee on the Dark Core, but with optical switches you usually get up to 100 million clicks before they start to degrade in quality. So the M65 RGB Ultra will likely hold up over time better than the Dark Core, and it is worth bearing that in mind if you're considering a purchase and don't want something that will let you down in a short space of time. Obviously 50 million clicks isn't really short though, so you should still get a great experience out of this mouse. And I still have it now, and I use it on occasion, and I will be comparing them in a minute, as I said, to show you the difference between the two. So if you like RGB lighting, then the dark core is obviously a preference. The M65 only has one zone, is not particularly fancy in that way. And also it is let down a little bit in my mind from the overall size of the thing. It's a little bit too short for me. However, if you use a claw grip style, you probably won't have that problem. You'll also note that the thumb rest isn't nearly as large and encompassing as that on the dark core, and so your hand does touch the desk a little bit more. This is obviously going to vary depending on your hand size and the way you play, but I think it's worth mentioning that for me, it doesn't sit quite as well on the desk and isn't as comfortable overall. However, I do think that the overall build quality of the M65 is not only visible at a glance, you can see the sheer difference between them because there's a lot less plastic and more metal, and also it's just a better looking mouse. So here you can see the two mice side by side, and what I'm going to do now is basically demonstrate the sound differences between them and show off the quality differences. Obviously the dark core has been knocking around for a while, so it's a bit more marred, so you'll have to forgive some of the look and feel of it, but what you'll see is a nice setup of both of them. What you will hear is a nice setup in terms of the clicks on the M65. It's a lot crispier, it feels a lot nicer, it makes less rattly noises in the hand when it's moved around. Both of them are slick though, they move across the mouse mat nicely, they don't make an excess amount of noise, they also don't have any problems in terms of getting stuck on the mouse mat and not responding as they should. The M65 is more responsive thanks to the zero gap design and the optical switches. Both do have that 2000 Hz polling rate though, so they are very responsive, and with the slipstream wireless you do get the ultra low latency setup. The Bluetooth connectivity obviously makes both of them appealing as well, because you can connect to multiple devices. So both great mice, but for different reasons. The M65 is certainly my favourite though. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Hope you found this video useful, interesting, hilarious, or otherwise. Take a look at these other videos that I think you might find interesting as well. And have a look at the description for links and other information you might find useful. Click that join button to see the benefits of being a member of my YouTube channel. And most importantly, have a great life.